Who owns the copyright in a tattoo? Is it the tattoo artist? Is it the client who commissioned the piece? Or is it the original artist who did the design that is used as reference? In the past few years, we've started to see a lot of cases in America referring to tattoo copyright law. Now, there are a few different court cases that are very interesting when we're talking about this subject. So the first case was actually in reference to the movie The Hangover. And in The Hangover, there was a character who ended up getting drunk and getting Mike Tyson's face tattooed on his face. Mike Tyson did not authorize the use of this tattoo in this movie, and his team ended up suing the movie for the rights to use this tattoo. Now, this case was settled out of court, so there wasn't really a conclusion. What happened after this was a bit of a landslide. In the last few years, there have been several court cases that are about the laws of tattoo copyright and who actually owns the right to the design. Now, the reason this is important is it's going to set the precedent for tattooing going forward. Depending on the outcome of these trials, tattooing is going to change. Whether we are going to be allowed to use certain types of images is going to be dictated by these laws. And this is going to dramatically affect tattooing as a whole, not even just for realism or portrait artists, but basically anybody who is referencing any type of art that originally exists. So that could also include other tattoo artists' flash, other paintings, stickers, and anime, which are all things that you see copied quite often in tattooing. The second case that's really interesting to look at is actually about Cardi B. Now, Cardi B used a man's photograph of his back tattoo on her album cover. So, the guy whose back tattoo was used on the album cover decided that he wanted to sue Cardi B for the use of this image. He ended up losing. A jury found that Cardi B had done nothing wrong. And the reason for this is because he actually didn't own the rights to that image. In photography, the photographer owns the rights to the photograph. So what happens then is even if a model is in that photograph, the model, unless they have a release, does not actually own the right to that photo. So because the photographer didn't sue Cardi B, the guy actually had no right to this image, and therefore he lost the case. The reason that this case is particularly crazy is that this was actually this man's back, and there was no permission to use it. But of course, you have to consider who actually owns the right to that image. Now, more recently, if you've been paying any attention to the news, you would have seen that Kat Von D was sued by a photographer. The photographer took a photo of Miles Davis in the 1970s. This photograph was used by Kat Von D on a client. So what happened was the photographer ended up suing Kat because she didn't have permission to use that image. At almost the exact same time that this case was taking place, there was another case that was setting a precedent. So the estate of Andy Warhol was being sued by the estate of Prince. Andy Warhol was commissioned to do a painting of Prince by Vanity Fair. The original art that was commissioned by Vanity Fair using this photograph was never actually given long-term usage rights. So initially, the image of Prince was authorized for a one-time use by Andy Warhol's estate, but because it ended up being used again at a later time and for a lot of money, they ended up being sued for this. So this case was settled in 2023. The jury found that Andy Warhol did not have the right to use this image of Prince. Now, going back to what we were talking about with the Kat Von D trial. So Kat Von D claimed she did not charge for this tattoo. And because she said she didn't charge for this tattoo, she technically was found not guilty. The problem with this is the fact that she didn't charge, and that was the reason that she was found not guilty. So while it does sound like a minor victory for us, the implication of this is that the future of tattooing may dramatically change. Now, the reason I say this is because of the outcome of the Andy Warhol case. So the Andy Warhol situation where he was found guilty basically means that because he profited off of the image that he didn't have permission to be using in the first place long term, that basically means that a tattoo artist using an image without permission for monetary gain could potentially be sued and lose. So what does this mean? What do we do? Well, it's an interesting question, and we don't really have a definitive answer. Basically, the best piece of advice I could possibly say is be aware of this and ideally do not use images that don't belong to you. Now, the other concept at play here is the concept of fair use. Typically, when an image is very popular, if you use it in art, you're not technically doing anything wrong because there is fair use of this. Also, if you're doing art that is transformative enough from the original image, you will technically be allowed to own that right because now you have done something that means something else. I know that sounds absolutely strange, but that is actually the legal precedent. If you take an image of something and you transform it enough that it means something else, suddenly that is no longer owned by the original artist. Hypothetically speaking, you could potentially take an image and transform it into skin. This may be another way we can circumvent the situation with the legalities of the copyright law. The tattoo industry needs to be aware of this and needs to start having conversations about what this looks like going forward. And the reason for that is if we don't, we're going to start to see a lot more tattoo artists being sued for using images that they don't have rights to. So if you're an artist, a tattoo artist, or a collector, and this is the first you're hearing about this, please make sure to share this video with everybody in the industry, because this is something that is absolutely going to start affecting us and start affecting us very soon. If you're a lawyer and have any legal advice, please pitch in. We would really appreciate it. We would love to know what you think overall. So if you're a tattoo artist, a collector, a fan, whomever, please leave your opinion in the comment section below.